Assalamu alaikum. That is, may God's peace be upon you. Welcome back to the Power of Educating Our Own. This is a podcast hosted by the Clara Muhammad Schools Network. We are so glad that you have decided to join us again. I am your co-host, Marsha Nivens Muhammad, and I'm here with
Patricia Salahuddin. Assalamu alaikum and welcome everyone.
Yes, and so we are back for another great show. The Power of Educating Our Own, as I said, is hosted by the Clara Muhammad Schools Network. We are a network of approximately 20 schools. I'm so used to saying 19 schools because that's what we've been saying, but I think on my last count it might have been 20. So I got to fact check myself. But at any rate, we work together to support the creation, the development, the strengthening, and the overall well-being of the Clara Muhammad schools, as well as education as it relates to our children in general. And so we share ideas and resources amongst each other to strengthen all of our institutions across the country and internationally. Tonight's show is going to be centered on what does it mean to be a Clara Muhammad school. So, for those who are very familiar to our community, you know what a Clara Muhammad school is, but perhaps you're not sure what the essence of the school is right, and what it's centered on. And so we're going to have a discussion this evening with Dr. Kadir Abdul Sabor about what it means to be a Clara Muhammad school. But before we do that, for those of you who are joining us, please drop in the chat where you're joining us from. Send greetings. Just let us know where you're from. We always like to see that. And if you have questions throughout the show, feel free to go ahead and drop it in the chat or in the comment section. And if we have time, we will for sure highlight your questions and get those answered. But without further ado, we're going to bring on our guest for this evening, Dr. Kadir. Assalamu alaikum, Dr. Kadir. How are you? Oh, let me get you off mute because I don't hear you. Okay, there you go,
Uh-oh.
Dr. Kadir. We can hear you now.
I'm fine, pray be to Allah. How are you?
Doing well, doing well. We've had you on our show before, and so I'm glad that we're able to bring you back because you hold with you a wealth of knowledge, a wealth of information, a wealth of history as it relates to education in our community. And so, tell our listening audience who you are and tell us a little bit about yourself.
Okay, give me 2 seconds. I gotta close this door. Hang on.
Yep, take it. Go ahead and go for it. And while Imam Kadir does that, just a reminder for those who are watching us, or you just popping in, let us know where you're joining us from. I have one brother here. Brother Jerome gives the salams and tells us he's watching from Sheboygan, Wisconsin. Wow.
Wow.
Wonderful to
Mashallah.
see you. So go ahead, Dr. Kadir. Let us know who you are and how'd you get into this world of education.
Okay, m- my name is Kadir Abdul, and I've been a part of the community since I guess around 1971. So I don't know. I guess that's 54 years or something like that. And I got into education. I don't know how I got into it. To tell you the truth, I just saw it was a need, and my own experiences I found as I grew older, I discovered my own education experience was so dramatically different from a normal people's education. I said, look, there must be something going on here. So I began to look at it and study and try to understand what was going on, and that kind of led me into education. So we've had the Clara Muhammad School. First of all, I started the University of Islam in Philadelphia. I taught mathematics and science there. Then we had the Clara Muhammad School in Richmond, Virginia. We had the Clara Muhammad Boarding School in Randolph, Virginia. And then we had the Tawhid Prep School in Richmond. And then we had the New African Umar Online School. And we started working with others. We started the Muslim Teachers College in Randolph, Virginia, too. So I've been piddling around education for quite some time, and my background has already been the hard sciences, always been hard science, science, engineering, like that, mathematics. But when I got to graduate school, I discovered they had this thing called Social Foundations of Education. When I found out what it was, I was like, hey, that explains why I got the short end of the stick on education. So let me study this. So that's kind of how I got into it.
Wonderful. And so you all have heard him list the various institutions that he was a part of building or creating. And so when I say that Imam Kadir holds a wealth of knowledge as it relates to education in our community, I mean it. And so, Dr. Kadir, tell us about, from your perspective, what does it mean to be a Clara Muhammad school? You know, we often hear about those institutions. You have tons of experience as it relates to the institution. What does that mean? What's so different or special about a Clara Muhammad school?
But that's a great question. I'm glad you gave me an hour to answer it. So first of all, we have to think about it from different perspectives. First of all, the one thing we have to think about is what does it mean to be a Clara Muhammad school to parents? What does it mean to be a Clara Muhammad school student to students? What does it mean to be a teacher at Clara Muhammad school to the faculty? And what does it mean as an administrator to be a part of a Clara Muhammad school? So each of these four, I should also add a larger community too. Let me just make a
Mm-hmm.
note here. So in each of these cases, so the Clara Muhammad school system means something different to different people. So the only way to answer that is to first try to understand what Sister Clara was trying to do, and then once we understand that, then we can see how people in these five groups that I mentioned uh, understood it, the degree that they understood it, and what they think they're going to get out. Because people are motivated by what they think they're going to get out of something. We live
Mm-hmm.
in that kind of a world. What's in it for me? It shouldn't be that way, but that's just the way it is. So first of all, Sister Clara Muhammad has some very unique characteristics. And these characteristics are the backbone of the school. Number one, she was a very determined person. She made up her mind that she was not going to send her children to the public schools. And when I heard your mama say this, I'm sure you have too, that when the officials came to the house, knocked on the door, she told them, I'm not sending my children to your school. I'll be as dead as this door sill before I send my children to your school. And we have to understand the context in which that was spoken. See, there was no such thing as homeschools in those days. And the law
Mm-hmm.
said all youngsters had to go to school. So here this woman is. She's saying, I define what you say because you don't have my child's best interest at heart. So number one characteristic that should be really apparent to everybody is that you really have to be determined if you're going to walk down this path. Is
Mm-hmm.
in Surah Al-Ballad in the Quran, Allah talks about the two paths that are steep, two paths that is steep, and the righteous person has to choose the path that's of the steep path, and that's the most difficulty, and the others
Mm-hmm.
choose the easy path, and that's the one that ends them in the hellfire. So that's one aspect of it. The other aspect of it is that there was never a concern about material aspects. Okay, so some people think that a school has to be a building and this, that, and the other. It has to have somebody else to stamp on their put their accreditation on it and to certify that it's a school. And so there's that aspect of it, school, and they think that that's important. Well, Sister Clara Muhammad understood what she was trying to teach her students, and the things that she was trying to teach her students were things that elevated themselves, their souls, strengthened their faith, helped them to understand what it means to be free. So the ballot, that actually movie had the ballot, a free man in the city. What does it mean to be free? How does your faith give in Allah the Almighty give you dignity? So these are the kind of things that were very important. Also, at the same time, students have to have uh, academic prowess. They had to be able to read and write and do mathematics and so on to go on and to assume leadership roles in society. So there was that aspect of it. There's the spiritual aspect of it. They had to have a spiritual foundation, and it was the academic aspect of it that they had to be able to function in society. Have to be functionally literate. This is a term that came up in one of this conversation we had somewhere or another, and I thought that was to shed a little insight on that functional literacy. And the third aspect that comes to mind is that once students begin to understand this, Clara Muhammad was able to show them how this faith and the determination to achieve something gives you freedom to make change in your life. So you don't have to accept the
Mhm.
conditions that you find yourself in. You have the strength now to make changes in your life. So once you make these changes in your life, it brought you to a new position in society. And once you get to that point, then you start to develop your future. Your future is actually predicated on what the strength level of your faith, your understanding of what it really means to be free in the society, what opportunities you have in society, and also your ability to determine the kind of change in the future that you have for yourself. So as a background, so that we have the idea of what Clara Muhammad School meant when Sister Clara Muhammad first came up with the idea. So I'll stop there for a minute, take a couple questions before we go on, if there are any. If not, I'll go ahead on. Okay,
Wonderful. And so,
hearing
no,
none.
I'm yeah, we hear you. No, we're here. And so, my next question is how does the school blend? How does the school blend academic excellence with Islamic values and characters? Because you talked about how um, Sister Claire Muhammad was very much into making sure that the students were connected to their Islamic heritage and understanding Islam. But when we think about school, we think about academics as well. And so, what are we doing in the Clar Muhammad schools that perhaps is different from other school systems in terms of marrying the academics with the Islamic values?
Okay, that's a very good question, sister. And to answer that question, you have to think of it from the perspective of five different groups. How do parents understand spirituality and academics? How do students understand spirituality and academics? How the faculty understand spirituality and academics? And the administrators, what do they think about spirituality and academics? And what does the community as a whole think about it? Well, for the parents, we found over the years that parents fall into two groups. They choose to send their uh, students to Claremont School for 1 or 2 minutes. Now, I'm doing an overgeneralization here. There are exceptions to this, but I'm just kind of giving you two broad categories here. You have the parent who's really have they are strong in faith themselves. They are sincere believers. They're dedicated to their religion, and they want the best for their children. They know the best place for their children to be in an environment that teaches them the religion, the spiritual. That's one. Then you have other parents who use the Clark Muhammad school system as threatening. Oh, you don't do good in public school. I'm gonna send you to Muslim school. I'm gonna send you right over there. They'll straighten you out, boy. I know they'll straighten you out. So you have parents that fall in both those categories, right? So when you have parents that fall in those two categories, spirituality and academics have two different meanings. In the first case, it means that the parents want the child to get the spiritual foundation. The education comes. It comes with it. Comes later as the child grows. The parents have discovered through their own experience that the academic comes with it in a natural sort of a way. The second situation where the parent is threatening the child, then they don't see it that way at all. They're not concerned about the spiritual side of it. They just want the threat to get the child to learn to behave themselves. They just trying to get the behavior thing. So that's one side of it. And then you have students on the other side who are the same way. You have students who want to come. We had a student years ago, when we first started the Muslim Teachers College. We had a student from, I won't say what city, uh, but she wanted to come to Muslim Teachers College for the spiritual side of it. She wanted to do some other things, but she wanted the spiritual development of it, and she was the first student that applied. So you have the students that really have a desire to get that spirituality in themselves. Their own experiences make it real to them. And then you have students on the other side, who come to the school and they come for academic goals. We have some schools around the country, Atlanta for one, where students do very well academically, and parents want their students, their son, his daughter to be in that school. The child wants to be in that school because he knows that the graduates, the Clara Muhammad School, becomes doctors, lawyers, and Indian chiefs. So they want to get there they don't care about the spirituality. I'll pray if you want me to pray, but I want to learn math and chemistry, science, and see. So you have those things on the children's side. Now, on the faculty, you have the same kind of situation. You have faculty that know nothing about teaching, but they have a sincere desire to help youngsters. And we had a lot of these in the University of Islam. Parents who just wanted to try to help the students as best they could, and they would give them all they could. And those students did very well. Parents were sincere. The children, the youngsters did well. And at the same time, you have faculty who think that, oh no, I have to teach you what I learned in school, so therefore this week we're going to read Shakespeare. I know a Muslim teacher who did this. we're going to teach you Shakespeare. You got to know Shakespeare. Why? What's that? No, you have to know Shakespeare because all educated people know Shakespeare. So you have the parents that they're concerned with academics, but they don't see the importance of the spiritual side. And then you have administrators. Administrators are dealing with all kinds of things, trying to get funding. They're trying to convince people to support the school. They ain't got no money. Things are always tight. And then somebody's breathing down their neck and say, are you accredited? Most people don't know what accreditation means. Are you accredited? Will my child be able to go transfer to another school? Well, if you really believe in the school, why would you want to transfer to another school? But the administrators have these same kind of concerns. Well, how can I bring the spirituality into the child without making the parents so mad that they take the children out? Or how can I have the parents bring the academics and the spirituality together in a way that doesn't offend the non-Muslim students that we have, because we have a lot of those too. And then you have respect for the community. You have the imam at the community, not as much now as it used to be. We have imams who themselves have very little education, hadn't gone very far in school, dropped out of school. And then they did life, and life beat them up so bad that they got their life in order, started learning the Quran, studying and so on, and became very, very prominent and very in their community. And they've been good, hard workers, diligent workers, learn the Quran. But academics hadn't served them in their own experience. So in their own experience, school doesn't mean much to them. You see? So to them, as spirituality is important, well, they get that at Juma. And then you can just get the academics time. We can just set up, go wherever you can to get that, you see. So that's a big question when you say how do you get the spirituality and academic bring it to the forefront? Because everybody sees it different. Everybody sees it different. But we go back to Clara Muhammad, she understood that there was a natural merger of these two. And if you read, as we read in the Quran, and where Allah says, if all the trees were pins, and all the oceans were ink, and had 7 oceans beside, you'd run out of ink before you run out of the wisdom of Allah. So that just shows the magnitude of the knowledge that can be gained through a genuine devotion and study of the religion in the context of the spirit, the physical creation, in the context of the creation. You can't study the religion by itself. You can't study creation by itself. They have to merge together. I read a book a couple months ago. I didn't read the whole thing. I started, and this was a non-Muslim author. This guy was actually he was a reporter, and he was talking to a physicist who was not a Muslim either. And this physicist said that calculus was the Almighty's gift to humanity for understanding his creation. So you have to have the academics in order to study creation. And the spiritual person recognizes that, and it comes together. So in answer to your question, they actually do merge together in a natural sort of way. The problems come when you try to force it. Try to force one over the other. That's when the problem occurs. But as long as they come together in a natural sort of way, then they blossom and the youngsters do very well.
Dr. Kadir, I love the way you
I hope
divided this up
yes.
into different, the different aspects and different people. Mm, So, and you have all of these, all of this in one place. Whose responsibility is it to carry out that natural blend? Which one? Who takes on that responsibility of making sure that parent who came with the discipline, interest, and behavior, and the student who's interested in academic, and the faculty member who's more concerned about the academic. Who's responsible for, or how do we blend it? I know you said natural, but someone has to start the process. Who does that?
Well, the process actually, uh, it's like we're reminded in the Quran where Allah says, "Let there arise out of your band the people enjoying what's good, enjoying what's right, forbidding what's wrong." Um, what happens is that as all 4 or 5 groups, as they study the Quran in their own situation, whatever they're doing, if they're mechanics, teachers, or doctors, what no difference, in their own situation, as they study the Quran, then what happens is that the Quran lightens their soul and their spirit until they can see the academics in it. Because you can't see it at first. We teach, and I always listen to how people say they're going to do it kindergarten, first grade, second grade, third grade, teach the children who Allah is. And the youngsters that they did mimicking, they're doing parrots. It hasn't dawned on them what it really means yet. But we do that because that's important for them to have those concepts. But what happens as we mature, those concepts come alive in us. They're just not words anymore. They become alive in our experiences. After you've been looking for a job for, about 4 or 5 years, you can't get one. You suddenly, there must be something wrong with me, and then you start changing you, and you get a job, and you say, well, "Oh, wait, what's going on here? It's me, not them. It's me." And what happens is that the individual wakes up or quickens him or herself to the majesty of what's being offered to them. They understand that this is a great gift, and then what happens is that all the people from all 5 groups come together and they collectively bring it to fruition. So it's not a one person thing, it's bringing everybody together. And as they come together, then the natural leadership, the Quranic guidance comes out of that group. So it's not a single person or a single position that does it, it's the natural. Like in the another place in the Quran where it talks about the iron heats it up and the froth that comes up to the top, the impurities come out, and all you left with was the purities. That's it's a natural thing that happens just like that. When people come together as they understand and discuss the Quran and say, that happened to me. I can remember that in my life. And what that does is it brings the spiritual connection to the environment, to the experience, and then you see the schools become what they want to be. Because everybody, all 5 groups are on the same page then.
And so, along those lines, Dr.
Oh, I
Kadir,
love it
because
when I talk.
I
Thank
also,
you.
oh, I think something's, can you hear us?
Yeah, I hear you.
Okay, good. Along those lines, because I too like the fact that you are giving us, you're showing us that these questions um, perhaps produce a different result depending on whose perspective we're looking from. And so, with that, how important is it for the curriculum and the culture of the school to be grounded in um, like the vision of the Quran or creation based learning? Because you often, when you were answering the previous questions, you talked about how let's go back to what the intention was for Sister Clara Muhammad, right? Because if we sort of deal with how everyone else is looking at this thing,
Mhm.
it may be off base to the left, to the right, of where it originally was founded from. So, how important is it to have the school's curriculum and culture sort of be grounded in those foundational things um, that Sister Clara Muhammad was trying to establish for her children?
Okay, that's a good question. The thing to remember here is that Allah the Almighty created us all in our own environments and own different circumstances. Some of us speak one language, others speak a different language. Some are tall, some are short, some are one complexion, some are another complexion, different skin colors, all these things. He created us all differently. But what's inside of it, the essence, the part that he's in contact with, is the same in all of us. It's the same, it's the same thing there. So when we try to isolate or separate some aspect of the education process and say, okay, I'm gonna focus on just curriculum. How can I make this curriculum do everything? Or just on having a Quran school. How can I make this Quran school do everything? Or just having a skills training school. How can I make that do everything? When we try to do that, what we do is we fall victim to the same problems that have enslaved us. We think everything can be dissected and cut in little bitty pieces, and we study that little piece and make that little piece solve the problem. And that's what we see all around the world. The wealthy people think that they can solve the problem because they got all the money. The some despotic leaders think they can solve the problem because they got all the power. Other people who have a narrow-minded interpretation of religion think they can solve the problem if they convert everybody to their religion. So anytime we think of anything related to the Quran and we try to isolate it into a little uh, analytical group, we miss the whole mark. We miss it because we think our minds are in the constraints of the education that we received. And the education that we received came from colleges and universities, who in many cases the professors don't believe in nothing but themselves. I had a professor one time in graduate school told me, um, he said, if you have a question, ask me, uh, and I'll answer it. If I can't answer it, it's not a legitimate question, so it doesn't need to be answered. This was a professor in college. This is, I was in grad school. Math people are kind of crazy anyway. Anyway, but the point I'm making is that anytime we do that, anytime we think that we can narrow it down to one dimension, one discipline, then we've missed the whole mark on ourselves. So it can't be done. What has to happen is it has to merge kind of naturally, and it has to be sort of a ubiquitous presence in everything that we do. For example, okay, let's take a class. Class school meets the first day, and the first time the teacher meets the students meet the teacher and the students have to establish a tone of respect. Now, that may or may not be in the curriculum, but that's got to be there. You got to have that common respect. The teacher might be teaching a class on language arts, or writing or anything, but the respect becomes a part of it. Now, the respect is a characteristic from the Quran. Now, that's becoming a part of what the youngsters have to do. How do you teach a new teacher, to do that? You can't. It has to be something that comes from them naturally. It has to come from them.
Mm-hmm.
So then the teacher decides to take them on a field trip. So they go on a field trip, they get on the field trip, they get on the bus. I saw this. We had a group of students came here to our meat plant no more than 2 weeks ago. 20 students. It was a summer camp sponsored by Matthew Malcolm in New York. They have a summer program. They had 22 students came down here. And those students came down there and know every one of them. Now, if you know anything about middle schoolers, you cannot get middle schoolers to shut up. Those 20 students were like young men and young women. Sister said, okay. And they shut right up. I looked at them. I said, man, middle school wasn't, the classes I taught wasn't like this. But that's because what's happened is that they've established the Quranic foundation and everybody is tuned to that. So it's not so much of a challenge, a fight all the time, right? So you don't have that fighting. And then if you look at the way we've been trained in schools, when I was in graduate school, undergraduate school in mathematics, that was all you learned, mathematics. You didn't learn about nothing else. I'm sure you guys had some experience in whatever field you were in. But that's not where Islam is. That's not where the Quran is. It has to come out in sort of a way where all things blend together. So you have to have some sort of a curriculum because that's how we use that for accountability. There's no question about that. But that's not the whole answer. That's only a part of it. That's an important piece of it because we use that accountability. We use accountability because we've learned that in our education that you got to be accountable, and I'm going to grade you on it or pay you based on it or something. I got to mark you for how good of a teacher you are.
Mm-hmm.
You see, so we've learned that ourselves. We've internalized those principles ourselves, and we project that into everything that we do without even consciously thinking about it. We project it in everything we do. So think about it. Think about it. Take 12-year-old boys, for example, and you put in classroom somebody, maybe 8, 10 or so, and you put a teacher in front of them who really has their concern in heart. Who really wants these boys to grow and prosper. Now, boys are all over the place at 12, 13, they swinging from the chandeliers. They just having a good time. But the person in front of that class understands that. And so the person in that class engages them in things that channels that energy. At the same time, it becomes instructive. Let's go camping next weekend. What kind of tree is this? What kind of tree is that? What can I make from this tree? I can take this tree and I can make houses. You can get into carpentry. You can get into all kinds of things. What about the sap of this tree? What can I do? I can make maple syrup out of. You bring things to the surface in the experience of the youngster, so the youngster can identify immediately with what it is that you're talking about. It's not abstract. Now, let me just mention this while you put this up. What's happening in education is that there's a systematic movement to make sure that the masses of the population remains ignorant.
Yes.
There's a systematic movement to make sure that the masses of the education remain ignorant. Why? Because as long as the population is ignorant, then you can have a knucklehead for president. People won't be smart enough to know how to go against him, right? So think about the things we used to when we was in school. You learn your multiplication tables. Wrote. You stood up and wrote. 5 times 4 is 20. 6 times 4 is 20. You learned them all. You multiplication, division, add, subtract, facts. Now they have the new math. You don't have to do nothing. You just take a calculator to class. That's dumbing down the curriculum. There's a guy that wrote a book called The Dumbing Down of America. Used to when we used to come to school, you learn to write your name in cursive. Now, if you find a classroom, middle school class, if you can find 3 or 4 students out of 30 that can write their name in cursive or can write a sentence in cursive, you've done a marvelous thing. There are students in college that can't do it. I had students when I was teaching at the university. This guy tells me, he says, Professor, he's doctor, I'm a little off today because I haven't had my meds. So you can imagine what I told him. But the point I'm making is that the things are happening now to make sure that the educated community does not come to grips with the things that's undermining them. So that's what the Clara Muhammad School means. We've got to bring it back to life. We got to do it again. We got to pull it together in a way that it feels natural for the teacher, natural for the administrator, natural for the student, natural for the parent, and natural for the community. And allow them to make it shine. And then you'll see the progress that we need.
Imam Kadir, this is absolutely wonderful. Listening to knowing that I was a teacher for many, many years, and knowing how we got to the point where we were not, we were to teach the student to follow directions. That's what we had to do. You had to follow directions. And if a child, these children who read a lot and do a little extra, they may have a different way of doing something. That if they didn't do it the way that they was expected to do it, if they had a little new idea, nope, you're wrong. You're not following direction. So how do we how do we get past that? Or how do we help our students? And and sometimes you need to teach them in order, and so you have those standardized tests, certain things they have to learn to do. But how do you help the children to be creative and not fall victim to having to follow directions? How do we do that?
Well, there's been a lot of studies on that, and then what's come out of those studies, Michael Apple and some others have done some real studies in education, and they found that there's another woman too. I can't think of her name now. What happens is that the students who are independent thinkers, they force them
Mm-hmm.
out of the school. They drop out. They're the dropouts. They force them out of the school system because they don't conform. They label them, and then it becomes a self-fulfilling prophecy. You ain't no good. You ain't
Mm-hmm.
no good. You ain't no good. Pretty soon, you have to say, "Well, I ain't no good. So I ain't do anything you want to do." So
Mm-hmm.
the
Mm-hmm.
the, the not it's not a simple answer, but what has to happen is the kind of things that you guys are working on now, training the teachers. If you guys understand the whole picture, and then you train the teachers, they'll get it. They'll
Mm-hmm.
understand. But part of that is the challenge there is that most of us don't realize that we've all been brainwashed by education ourselves.
Yeah.
And unless we come to grips with that fact, it'll be hard for us to
Mm-hmm.
admit that that there's a problem. I'm not crazy. Everybody else is crazy. I'm not crazy. I'm saying I know my answer is the right answer. I know my way is the right way. You see?
Yeah.
And that's the position that's taken. So it's really kind of it's not it's not easy to do, and it's because we want things like in a microwave world. You want you get a book, you start on page 1 to page 180. Everybody understands the concepts that you're trying to teach them. It just doesn't work that
Right.
way. It's
Right.
not that way at all. There has to be a
Yeah.
situation where they come in contact with a reality and experiences, and they have to see the Quran come alive in their life. They have to see it in life. That's why we started our school. We started with middle school. People thought I was crazy. People say, "Oh, middle school, that's the hardest grade. Why don't you start with the young ones or the old ones? Why middle school? Because that's the most difficult ones. They're the ones you need to save before they go completely crazy, and they're old enough to see that you can see with your
That's
own eyes
true.
that they're going crazy, and you need to do something about it."
That was the age I started with
You
in
got to
middle
start with middle
school.
school.
Yeah, I started with middle school.
Yeah, start with them.
That was
If
that I was
if you can do
so
them,
when
you
I
can do
started in
anything,
middle
man.
school. Say it again.
There's a little delay,
If
but
you
go
can
ahead,
teach
Dr.
middle school,
Fisher.
you can teach right.
Oh, okay. Yeah. Okay. Yeah. I got my feet burned. It's like how you say you get the burned by the there's a saying, burned by the fire, by your feet by the fire, or something like that. There's a saying about when you start on something really hot. Well, I started with the middle schoolers, and
Yeah,
I really learned a lot. That was the worst and the best time of my life with my middle school.
So
they
if
ran
you
you away, right?
just joining us,
No,
yeah.
they
If you
almost
just
did.
oh,
They almost ran me away. They almost did. They did. I did. I was ready to
okay,
go.
okay,
Yeah, I was ready to go.
but you
But
held
then,
on.
no, I stayed. I stayed, and I learned what I needed to know. And I'm so happy that I
Yeah,
stayed because I love those children. When I learned how to work with them, I really love those
right.
children. And I just had the best time of my life teaching middle school. I really did.
That's
So
that's true.
if you just joining us for the power of educating our own, we are having a conversation tonight about what it means to be a Clara Muhammad school, and our guest is Dr. Kadia Abdul Sabor. And we've been talking all things Clara Muhammad School. One of the things that, also, if you are just joining us, drop a comment in the chat. Let us know where you're watching from, so that we can shout you out. Assalamu alaikum, Brother Anthony gives us a salams. He is a faithful watcher, so thank you for being with us. And then we have a comment, I guess, and a question from Brother Jerome. He says, I am convinced that the saving grace for inner city youth is attendance in a Clan Muhammad school. How do we solicit them in our neighborhoods? And so we're going to come back to that question, Brother Jerome. What I wanted to, and I'll bring it back up on the screen. But what I wanted to highlight right now is something that you said, Dr. Kadir, about the training, right? And so my question, so two things. One is that as I heard you sort of talk about how the teacher has to be the magic maker, so to speak, in the classroom, and being in tune with the child and what interests them and how to take what they know from the academics and from the Quran and bring it to life and what that child is connected to. It just stood out for me that like the teacher is the is the one in the classroom that sort of makes that magic. I'm calling it magic, obviously it's not magic, but makes that magic happen, right? And oftentimes when my daughter would have challenges in the classroom, I would sometimes I feel like we always put it on the child and what the child is or is not doing, right? And I'm not that parent, right? I'm also like, okay, well, she's struggling, but as the teacher with the skills, how do you then, help to bring things to life for her if she's struggling? Because the onus is also on the teacher in the classroom. And so I was glad that you brought that out. But my question is, what's the importance of like teacher training and things of that sort? Because you did mention that in terms of what we do as a Clara Muhammad Schools Network. Well, how important is it for our institutions to have teacher training?
Oh, it's absolutely essential. I mean, it's absolutely essential. You got to have it because nowhere are they going to get the kind of information that they really need to be successful with our children other than through our own training. Because they're not going to learn about spirituality at the public colleges and university. They're not going to learn about spirituality just teaching in the classroom if there's no spirituality present. They're not going to learn anything about the Quran, let alone any kind of spirituality. They're not going to learn it, and because they don't know it, they can't learn it. They can't inject it, infuse it into their classrooms. So, without a question, without a doubt, we have to have teacher training. But I think that one thing that we have categorically overlooked is that we don't, with our best intentions, the best intentions that we have, we don't bring out the most important or all of the characteristics or all the great qualities that Allah gives us in the Quran for the human being. We identify some of them, but we don't bring them all out. For example, um, we'll it's not uncommon here. Teachers start a class to say where Allah says, "Ikra bismi rabbika alladhi khalaq." Teaching the importance of reading, so they want to learn how to read. So they're using the Quran as a motivator for a reading class. Okay, and so then that leads into teaching and reading, and then sentences and so on and so on. I did the same thing in math. Teaching math, you start with the drills, stuff like that. You but you got to engage. But what we don't do, which is all through the Quran, we don't show practical applications of the knowledge that Allah gives
Mhm.
us. All through the Quran is nothing but practical applications of the knowledge that Allah gives us. Yusuf was in jail. When he got out of jail, he became over the storehouse. Well, he had to have some little accounting principles. He had to know something about accounting. He had to make sure that he was dealing with people justly and fairly. All throughout the Quran, we see applications. And
Mhm.
so in the zodiacal signs, all signs in the heavens. Okay, when Kitta was traveling, when Moses was traveling with the Kitta, and he came these four. He first came to a boat and he sunk the boat. So all the signs, all the applications of knowledge are in the Quran, but we don't give the children the knowledge of application. We just focus on learning the rules, learning the
Mhm.
language of the math. What about if we change that thing around and try to include businesses? Because Allah mentions tijara a lot in the Quran. Tijara means business. And this youngster now understands that he or she is responsible to use the knowledge and the skills that Allah has blessed them with to be successful in their business, whatever that happens to be. But in order to be successful in your business, you got to know how to write memos about your business, take care of your taxes, count your money, you know. So now it's not just math and reading and writing. Now it has to do with your livelihood. There's always a connection. The connection is a
Mhm.
connection is a connection that Allah gives us, and we have to learn how to use that connection in the development of that child. If a youngster comes home and he or she just spends time on their video games and then they, you know, their early teens, they think the parents get married. They think it's gonna be that way forever. They don't. They're not. They ain't care about school. They just live with mom and dad till things get better or something happens. Whatever's the future, they ain't worried about it. But when they see it as something, look, I got to take responsibility for myself. I'm going to have to take care of my wife and children. I'm gonna have to find some way to be able to go to Juma on Friday when I want to. Because right now, if I get a job and you say, Mr. Boss Man, I want to go to Juma on Friday for an hour and a half. What? I need you here. You can't go. So we sacrifice our religion and stay right there and do whatever it is that they want us to do. And we try to make up our uh, four rakas door, and also when we get home. But if we had our own business, we could have a carpet in one room. We go pray in our. That's where it's in the Middle East. Went to Turkey, was in Turkey for a little bit, but time come to pray, you prayed. You prayed. It wasn't a thing where you didn't pray. So, but we in the context of our American life, that's so different that to do that is sort of a requires great strength, like the strength Sister Clara Muhammad had. Because you have to be strong to tell your boss, look, I'll come to work for you, but I got to have my Jumas off. I'll work late if you want me to, but I need to go to Juma.
Absolutely. It sounded like your sound went out, but I think we're good now. Yeah, no, you bring up some really, really strong and important points, and I love it. You know, as you were talking, I was just picturing, making those adjustments in our various different communities, right? Because, like you said, sometimes we're not leading with that, right? We're not leading with that. And then I love the point that you made about um, being able to bring the practical application of the Quran to life in the classroom for the child, right? Like that's big. When we think about what a Clara Muhammad school is, that's a component of the institution that you don't find everywhere, right? How do
Mhm.
you take that story and pull out all the various things like you mentioned Joseph being over the storehouse, and now he has to be able to be accountable and all of these different things that it up until then it just felt like a story.
Yeah,
um
exactly,
and so
exactly.
right up until then it felt like a story,
Mhm.
earlier I asked you about marrying the Quranic principles and the academics, and that's exactly how you do it, right? And it's not
Yeah.
like
Right.
this very intricate, uh, you know, you got to go to school for 12,000 years to get it. That's a very
Mhm.
practical thing. Here's the story. What
Mm-hmm.
skills did that individual have to have in order to function in the role that they played? And what
Yeah.
skills do you then,
Right.
in the role that you what do you have to know and have in order to fulfill your obligation in this world? And I think that's what we do differently.
Yeah.
And when we're doing it at our best, when we're doing the Clara Muhammad school and we're functioning as a Clara Muhammad school at our best, that's the difference that we have in our institutions.
And I want to add that,
Right.
well, Dr. Katia, just to say that we here, you said that teacher training is essential. And you also mentioned that you just don't get that in college. So we, the Clara Muhammad School Network and the Clara Muhammad schools in general, we need to provide our own training. because we have to train our
That's right.
teachers to do this, to see the practicality and application of the Quran, and to use it. Train our teachers how to do that, and that's our job, because
Right.
no, we can't depend on anyone else to do that for us.
That's right. Because they don't want, and nobody else has the same uh, goals that we have. Our society is very, there's a lot of greed and self-interest. So they're not going to do anything to help an individual or a subculture assume a prominent role. But if we follow the Quran, Allah will put us in a prominent role. If we
Mm-hmm.
just do what Allah says and follow His guidance, He'll put us in the prominent role. And every knee will bow and every tongue will wag. Not because of the greatness of the individual, no, money, no, but because Allah the
Mm-hmm.
Almighty will make his his uh, his presence known through the good works that some of his creatures do, giving praise to him.
Yeah. Alhamdulillah. Alhamdulillah.
This week, past weekend, I had a chance to go to Inkster, Illinois, uh, Detroit, Wisconsin, Inkston, Wisconsin, and I was up there. You know, they have a school. They have a school building. It sits on 22 acres. Now, this was supposed to be a Clara Muhammad school. It's still in the developmental stages. It sits on 22 acres. The classroom building is 280,000 square. I'm sorry, yeah, 280,000 square foot. You know, average house is about 1,000 square foot, 2,000 square foot. This building has classroom space, 280,000 square foot. It has an auditorium that seats 1,100 people. It has a full gym, an Olympic-sized swimming pool, a football court, a baseball diamond, and several tennis courts. Now, this group of Muslims who work on this project, they just decided that this is something Imam Muhammad wanted, so they wanted to try to do it. They went together and pulled that stuff to get resources together. They bought that building. They bought 34 businesses in Inkston, uh,
I think
Wisconsin,
it's Michigan,
about
ma'am.
outside of Detroit, Michigan. Thank you. You know, I'm old. I can't remember that stuff. And they pull together and they're doing it. And it ain't a whole bunch of people doing it. They just understand the importance of showing how the Quran makes a difference in their life. I think they've been working on it now for about 10 years or so. And it's something to see. Every 2 or 3 times a year, a bunch of brothers and sisters go up there and they work a while and they raise the money they need to do what they do. And they have a convention once a year around Labor Day, like all the other communities around the country. But they're doing it. And they're doing it because they know that our community needs it. They're concerned about our community. They have a camp, Clara Muhammad Schools summer camp, and they are really doing it upright. But that's not the only one. You know, New Medina is the same way. Kind of progress we've seen in other communities who are working together. The point I'm making is that when people understand what Allah wants us to do and we do it, it's successful. That's the point
Mm-hmm.
I'm making. That's all I'm point I'm making.
Alhamdulillah.
And so, with that, Imam, that brings us to my last question, which is how do we, or what would be your advice for us to, as a community, to have our institutions sort of be on the same plane, if you will, in relation to how these institutions look from state to state, city to city? Because you just mentioned an example and a few other examples, and from time to time we talk about how Imam Muhammad, may Allah be pleased with him, wanted for a child to be able to go to any of the areas in the country and receive um, the same level, the same grade of education. So, any advice for
Right. That's
how
right.
we do that?
That's all. That's all teacher training. That's all personal development or prophetic development. I think is what you guys call it now. Uh, it's all in that, and it's the teacher training. The teachers have to be trained. You have to understand what it is that we're trying to do. That's what he's trying to do. All them years ago, we tried to talk about teacher colleges, just trying to get teachers to understand what they had to do. But it hasn't changed. So as more people, and it's happening, more people are coming along and seeing it, as more people get involved with it and see that you don't have to try to satisfy somebody outside of your responsibility to allow the Almighty, then you will see great change. And all the schools really basically go together. It's not going to happen overnight. I mean, it's going to take time for it to happen. Allah brings about change according to His plan, not ours. But
Right.
in time, inshallah, it'll come. It'll come. Just keep working at it, chipping away at the problem, and Allah will guide us all and give us the kind of guidance we need to bring about the changes in our approaches and the changes in our presentations and the changes in our measured outcomes so that we can touch the hearts and minds of new teachers and they can affect change among the students, which will be the next new generation of Muslims.
Mm. Amen. Alhamdulillah. Yeah. Thank you for that
Absolutely.
information because we definitely, that is so important to us here at the network. We want to provide the kind of training for our teachers so that they will be able to provide the environment that our children need in order to grow and develop into the life that Allah had planned for them to do. So we really appreciate you for that. It's really helpful to us.
Absolutely. And so I don't want to miss the opportunity to address Brother Jerome's question. His question was, how do we solicit for the Clara Muhammad schools to be in the neighborhoods? And one thing that I'll share from the Clara Muhammad Schools Network is that we are working very diligently to connect with communities across the country and beyond who are interested in reviving their Clara Muhammad school, starting a new Clara Muhammad school, strengthening the Clara Muhammad school that exists in their area. And so we welcome you to be a part of that work. The Clara Muhammad Schools Network meets monthly with institutions, again, across the country. And I keep saying beyond because we're in connection with the Clara Muhammad School in Bermuda. And so we want to be in touch with as many institutions that are looking to hold the banner of the Clara Muhammad School model at their institution. There are some of our schools that don't bear the name, but they absolutely carry with them the model of education and the tenets of what it means to be a Clara Muhammad school. And so we invite you to be a part of that work. As we prepare to end tonight's show, Dr. Kadir will give you any last words that you want to share with the viewers.
Okay, well, just the only thing that I want to share is that I'm so grateful that Allah is moving the education effort forward. Years ago, 20, 25 years ago, there was only a few people really saw the need, saw and understood the need of what was had to happen. But now there's a whole bunch of people doing it. And I want to commend you guys on the good work that you're doing too. So may Allah reward you all.
Amen.
Amen.
Thank you so much for that. This has been The Power of Educating Our Own. This show is hosted by the Clara Muhammad Schools Network. We are approximately a network of 20 Clara Muhammad institutions across the country and in Bermuda. We are here every Sunday evening at 7 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. Come back next Sunday for another great show. Until then, Assalamu alaikum and have a great week.
Alaikum assalam.
Wassalam.
Sister Clara Muhammad, a black Muslim woman from Macon, Georgia, was an extraordinary leader and pioneer. Her contributions, especially in the development of Islamic education in America, paved the way for thousands of Muslim families to take ownership of their children's future, starting at a time when homeschooling was illegal in the United States. She eventually established a network of schools that was later named Sister Clara Muhammad Schools in her honor by her late son Imam Warith Din Muhammad, rahimahullah. Sister Clara Muhammad helped establish the important role women had in early Muslim American history and was an inspiration to future generations of leaders. Without her, there would not have been a nation of Islam, or the unique Sunni Muslim community that evolved from it, one that was acutely aware of the concerns and aspirations of women. May Allah have mercy on Sister Clara Muhammad.